Welcome to the wonderfully complicated world of Victorian fashion, where women didn't just wear dresses, they wore structures. These garments weren't just outfits, they were feats of engineering, and hidden beneath all the lace layers and steel was a daily challenge. Most of us would never imagine how to manage the most basic personal routines in a dress that could take up more space than a dinner table. Picture this: you're wrapped in yards of fabric, tightly laced into a corset that squeezes your waist and restricts your breathing. You're walking through hallways with skirts that stretch nearly 6 feet wide. Every step is carefully calculated. Sitting requires a strategic plan, and through it all you're expected to look effortlessly graceful. The real question is, how did Victorian women handle bathroom breaks in these towering towers of tulle and steel? Hello, and welcome to Empress Secrets, the channel where we delve into the hidden histories and intriguing mysteries of the past. If you're fascinated by the secrets behind everyday life in bygone eras, hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to Empress Secrets for more captivating stories that bring history to life. Let's uncover these forgotten tales together and inspire each other to appreciate the ingenuity of our ancestors. To answer that intriguing question, we need to start at the beginning of a typical day in a Victorian woman's life. Getting dressed wasn't just a matter of slipping on a gown, it was a process, a ritual that could take hours and often required assistance from a maid or family member. The first layer was a thin linen shift, worn next to the skin and acting like a protective barrier, keeping the more expensive outer garments clean. This was practical and essential, as washing delicate fabrics was a major undertaking and not done frequently. The shift was simple, lightweight, and designed for comfort against the skin, but it was the foundation upon which the entire elaborate ensemble was built. Next came the corset, the defining piece of Victorian fashion. Tightly laced and reinforced with stays, often made from whalebone or steel, it shaped the torso and dramatically narrowed the waist. Some women wore them so regularly and so tightly that their rib cages adapted to the pressure, making deep breathing not really an option. The corset wasn't just about aesthetics, it was a symbol of discipline and femininity, enforcing an hourglass silhouette that was the ideal of the era. Lacing up required skill, as over-tightening could lead to fainting spells, a common occurrence at social events where women pushed the limits for that perfect figure. Then came layer after layer of petticoats. These weren't just for warmth or modesty. They helped build volume, turning the dress into a bell-like shape. Some women wore 5, 6, even 7 layers, each one adding bulk and making moving around that much more of a challenge. The petticoats were often starched to hold their shape, rustling with every step and adding to the auditory experience of Victorian fashion. But the crown jewel of this entire setup was the crinoline. The crinoline was a kind of structure, an actual frame made of steel hoops connected by fabric tapes, worn under the dress to hold it out in that iconic circular shape. At its largest, a crinoline could span up to 6 feet in diameter. Imagine trying to walk through a doorway with that, let alone fit into a chair. These structures were so expansive that some furniture had to be redesigned just to accommodate them. Chairs with no arms, specially widened benches, and extra space at dining tables all came into use just to allow women to sit down without collapsing their fashion. Sitting in a crinoline required a specific technique. One had to tilt the hoop slightly backward, easing into the seat while keeping the front of the skirt from flipping up. It was a maneuver that demanded practice and poise, turning something as simple as taking a seat into a display of grace. Now, imagine wearing all of this day in and day out and trying to deal with regular tasks like using the bathroom. The sheer volume and weight of the garments meant that even simple actions required careful strategy and physical coordination. Victorian women weren't just dressed to impress. They were navigating a constant logistical maze, turning basic needs into complex routines carried out with patience, grace, and astonishing cleverness. And this is just the beginning of the story. Victorian women didn't just wear fashion, they inhabited it. Their clothing was so structured and layered that it transformed their entire approach to everyday life, especially when it came to personal care and hygiene. Using the bathroom wasn't just a task, it was a carefully orchestrated performance. The simplest of human needs had to be managed within a framework of lace, steel, and social expectations. And at the center of it all was a single object that became an unsung hero of daily survival, the chamber pot. But these weren't crude containers tucked under beds. No, they were thoughtfully designed, especially for women navigating elaborate clothing. The most common type was oval-shaped with a smooth, curved interior, perfectly shaped to fit beneath the layers of crinoline, petticoats, and lace. Some of the higher-end versions even came with tight-fitting lids. These weren't just for controlling odor. They acted as subtle signals to household staff. A closed lid meant ready to be emptied, all without a word being spoken. In wealthier homes, the chamber pot was cleverly hidden. Elegant furniture served double duty. Chairs with secret compartments, cabinets with concealed containers, and beautiful wooden commodes that masked their real function with expert craftsmanship. These were pieces of both necessity and art. Behind the scenes, the household staff moved with precision and silence, keeping everything clean and discreet. Their job required more than efficiency. It called for timing, coordination, and absolute discretion. You could think of them as the backstage crew of a very delicate, very refined performance. Now, let's talk logistics. A Victorian woman couldn't simply lift up her skirts and be done with it. We're talking about up to 20 pounds of fabric and structure, a literal cage of steel hoops and stitched elegance. She had to master a technique that was part choreography, part mechanical know-how. The key was all about positioning. The chamber pot would be carefully placed beneath the layers, and through subtle body adjustments and strategic fabric arrangement, the entire process could be completed without removing a single piece of clothing. No zippers, no buttons, just posture, control, and an incredible sense of balance. At formal gatherings, things became even more refined. Large homes and ballrooms included retiring rooms, spaces specifically designed for women to step away and refresh. These rooms weren't empty powder rooms. They were fully staffed lounges where maids worked like a support team, assisting with skirt placement, timing, and cleanup, all while maintaining the appearance of total grace and discretion. This wasn't just functionality. It was an art form. The ability to handle a complex, private need without disturbing one's appearance or drawing attention was a skill women cultivated, passed down, and quietly perfected. They moved through their days like stage performers, always poised, always graceful, even while navigating what was in reality a small miracle of coordination. But here's a twist that might just surprise you. For much of the Victorian period, many women didn't wear what we would today recognize as underwear, at least not in the traditional sense. The sheer bulk and structure of their skirts were considered sufficient coverage, and in the beginning, it wasn't seen as necessary to wear another layer beneath it all. It may sound like the setup to a comedy, but for Victorian women, it was a very real problem. Imagine strolling down a busy cobblestone street, your crinoline catching a gentle breeze, only to have that breeze turn into a gust. In an instant, the entire structure could flip upwards, much like an umbrella turning inside out, and with no traditional undergarments in place, well, let's just say discretion could disappear in a flash. These unexpected fashion mishaps became so common that society had to reconsider what counted as modest, and the result was a small but revolutionary garment: split drawers. Now, these weren't like the underwear we know today. Split drawers were essentially two separate pant legs joined only at the waistband, with an open seam in the middle. It was a clever solution to a very real problem. These garments provided coverage and modesty when walking or sitting, but thanks to their open design, they allowed women to manage their personal needs without removing layers of clothing. It was a brilliant innovation. Modesty and practicality rolled into one. The design caught on quickly, especially among the upper class and those attending formal events, where bathroom logistics were even more delicate. But this was only one of many adaptations that helped women maintain composure amid layers of fabric, tight corsetry, and public expectation. Managing everyday life in Victorian clothing took more than grace. It took careful planning, silent communication, and an understanding of one's wardrobe on a near architectural level. And all of this was done quietly behind the scenes, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Keeping oneself fresh and hygienic beneath layers of fabric wasn't just about comfort. It was about dignity, especially in a society where appearances mattered almost more than anything. But without the convenience of modern plumbing or disposable products, women had to rely on a range of clever and, sometimes, surprising methods. Let's start with the basics. Toilet paper, as we know it, simply wasn't widely available for most of the Victorian era. Instead, people used whatever was practical and nearby. For working-class families, this might have meant pages torn from newspapers, catalogs, or recycled paper. In rural areas, natural materials like soft leaves or cloth rags did the job. In wealthier households, however, the approach was a bit more refined. Soft linen cloths, cut into small squares, were the preferred solution. These reusable cloths were washed carefully along with the household laundry. They offered a more comfortable and luxurious option and were considered a mark of gentility, yet another reminder of how deeply class shaped even the most personal routines. And speaking of laundry, this was no small task. Victorian dresses were grand, layered, and often made of delicate materials that couldn't be washed frequently. Instead, the outer garments were maintained with brushing, airing, and powders to absorb oils and prevent odor. It was the inner layers, like linen shifts, chemises, and those clever split drawers, that bore the brunt of everyday wear. These were washed more regularly, serving as a protective shield for the intricate and costly dresses worn on top. But what about during menstruation? Victorian women faced this monthly challenge without modern sanitary products and within the confines of steel frames, corsets, and layers of fabric. Their solution, a homemade cloth system, often referred to as a belt and pad arrangement. A soft belt worn around the waist held absorbent material in place, usually made from flannel, cotton, or other soft fabrics available at home. Some women even used natural fillers like moss or wool. Changing these materials required privacy, timing, and expertise, and while there's little written about it because it was rarely spoken of, women often changed their cloths many times a day. It was a discreet routine, performed with impressive coordination, often while continuing to fulfill social obligations or household duties. This entire system was built on silent cooperation and learned technique. Mothers taught daughters, ladies' maids offered assistance, and entire homes were structured to accommodate these private needs without disturbing the surface calm of polite society. And still, Victorian women carried themselves with elegance and poise, navigating these hidden complexities with a quiet strength that was nothing short of extraordinary. If you're loving this deep dive into the secrets of Victorian life, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your history-loving friends, and subscribe to Empress Secrets for more fascinating insights. Let's keep uncovering these hidden stories together and celebrate the resilience of women throughout history. To truly appreciate the ingenuity of Victorian women, we need to explore the broader context of their daily lives. The Victorian era, spanning from 1837 to 1901 during Queen Victoria's reign, was a time of rapid industrialization, social change, and strict moral codes. Fashion reflected these values, emphasizing modesty, restraint, and class distinction. Women's clothing, in particular, was designed to project an image of purity and domesticity, but it came at a cost: physical discomfort and limited mobility. The corset, for instance, was more than a garment. It was a cultural icon. Introduced in the early 19th century, it evolved from flexible fabric stays to rigid structures reinforced with metal. By the mid-Victorian period, the wasp waist was the fashion ideal, with waists cinched to as small as 18 inches. Medical debates raged about the health effects. Doctors warned of displaced organs, restricted breathing, and even infertility. But fashion prevailed. Women adapted, learning to breathe shallowly and move with deliberation. The crinoline, patented in 1856 by R.C. Milliet, revolutionized skirt design. Before its invention, women relied on horsehair petticoats, hence crinoline from crin meaning horsehair, which were heavy and hot. The steel hoop version was lighter and allowed for greater skirt volume without the bulk. However, it had drawbacks. The hoops could swing unpredictably, knocking over furniture or entangling with other skirts. Caricatures in magazines like Punch depicted women as walking bells or cages, highlighting the absurdity. Navigating public spaces in such attire required etiquette. In crowded streets, women tilted their crinolines to pass through doors or maneuver in carriages. Special crinoline elevators were even invented for getting in and out of vehicles. At home, the challenges were domestic. Cooking, cleaning, or caring for children while encased in layers was impractical, which is why upper-class women had staff and working-class women wore simpler versions. Hygiene was another layer of complexity. Bathing was infrequent due to limited plumbing. Many homes had no indoor bathrooms until late in the era. Instead, women used washstands with basins and ewers for sponge baths. Perfumes and powders masked odors, with lavender and rose being popular scents. For hair, which was rarely washed, brushes and oils kept it shiny, and elaborate updos hid any greasiness. Menstruation management evolved over the era. Early on, women used rags or diapers pinned to belts. By the 1890s, commercial products like Lister's towels, early sanitary napkins, appeared, but they were expensive and not widely adopted until the 20th century. Victorian literature rarely mentions these topics, but diaries and medical texts reveal the practicalities. Social expectations amplified the challenges. Women were expected to embody the angel in the house, a term from Coventry Patmore's poem, meaning pure, domestic, and graceful. Any lapse in appearance could damage reputation. Thus, mastering the art of discreet personal care was essential. As the era progressed, fashion shifted. The crinoline gave way to the bustle in the 1870s, a padded frame at the back, allowing for slimmer fronts, but still complicating movement. By the 1890s, the New Woman movement advocated for looser clothing, influenced by suffrage and cycling trends. Yet, throughout, Victorian women's resilience shone. They innovated, adapted, and maintained dignity in a world of constraints. Their stories remind us of the hidden labors behind historical glamour. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Victorian secrets. If this video inspired you, like it, share it, and subscribe to Empress Secrets. Let's continue exploring history's hidden sides together.